Well, hey there, everyone. How's it going? We're going to do some sharpening today. So I will show you what stuff I got in front of me is. I'll show you how it's used in sharpening. And we're just going to have a little fun little evening. And I'm going to sharpen this native fluted carbon fiber S90V. So I'm going to do this pen. Cool. This is going to be fun. So I was just thinking, you guys should probably talk to me in the comments to make sure I know what's going on. Yeah, Carl Maxwell's in the house. This is gonna be a good time. So there's a little story back to this about why I'm gonna sharpen this knife. So this is the first time I've ever used my camera like this. It's facing down at my desk, so I think it's pretty easy to see what's going on. But we're gonna sharpen this S90V fluted native. This is a new blade off of a TLS 90V native. So I've had this one since 2017. It's an amazing knife. Unfortunately, I learned how to sharpen on it a bunch of times. So the blade has some imperfections and stuff, and kind of spots where I dug into the grind at the heel, which is very common when I first started sharpening. So I swapped it to a lightweight, and now I have a new fresh blade and my favorite knife, but now it's got a factory edge, and I figure I'll show you guys how I take off a factory edge. So I'm going to go through my setup, talk about what I got. First thing you got to do, you got to get a sharpener. So I use a TS Prof Cadet. There's a Cadet, there's a Cadet Pro, there's a Cadet Nero. They're all pretty similar, but the Cadet is an amazing device. It does not come with this clamp, though, unfortunately. This is the single center clamp from the KO3. These are currently sold out, but I'm sure they will be back. But clamping in the center is important on the Cadet, and it's difficult with the stock clamps. So there's an adapter to use the stock clamps, or you can buy the center clamp, which I did. So I absolutely love this sharpener. This is how I make a living. I use this little device every single day. It's very precise. It's very satisfying to use, and it gives me incredible results. So TS Prof Cadet uses 6-inch stones. For stones, I just got these a couple weeks ago. They're made by a company called Hapstone, and they're not diamond. They're made of CBN, which is another material. I can't remember what it stands for, but they're similar to diamond stones, but they cut so much faster, and they leave a better finish, and they're better made, and they're heavier, and they're thicker, and they're all the same thickness, and they're flat. Basically, they're just amazing stones. So since I got these, I've been just loving sharpening every minute of it. It's been great. I've been getting the best edges of my life off these CBN stones. So I guess we can just start, and I can set things up and show what they're for. First thing we're going to do is we're going to clamp the knife. So the first thing I do when I clamp a blade is I take a piece, this little piece of, it's kind of like leather. It's called chamois cloth. It's made of sheepskin. Basically, that's going to go inside these jaws right here. And what it's going to do is it's going to protect the blade so it doesn't scratch. It's going to keep it from moving around. And since it's kind of got some give and thickness to it, it's going to make sure the blade stays centered angle-wise, orientation-wise. It stays centered inside of the clamps. So when you clamp a knife, this is probably the most important thing I will teach you. The traditional wisdom is you clamp in the center front to tip of the blade. So about, well, mine's a little bit off, but about equal amount hanging off front and rear. And then ideally on a lot of knives, but this does not work with Spydercos very often, from the tip to the heel, that line, it should be parallel to your jaw. So it really should be like this. This would be the proper way to set up most knives. However, this is the key to sharpening a Spyderco and getting a good heel. And this is why I wanted to make the video, because it's hard to explain this. What you're going to do, once it's in about the center, you're going to take a stone and you're going to put it right at the very heel of the blade. And you're going to twist the blade until it is completely parallel with the stone. So they're butted up right next to each other. So the stone's not going to grind across the flat. It's going to grind next to it. And then I'm just going to tip it like a teeny little bit out so it won't touch it. That's how you clamp a Spyderco. You center it, and then you use the stone as a guide on the heel to line up the heel. This does not follow the same logic as you would like a Koenig. You line that up tip to heel because it doesn't have a hard end that you have to hit. So that's that simple. We got a knife clamped. Other things that we're going to use. Next thing we're going to use is an angle cube. So your phone does this, but get a good angle cube. This one's from Gritomatic. It works pretty well. It's got magnets. It seems to be accurate. Then I'm going to take my arm of my TS Prof Cadet like this. And Spyderco factory angles are almost always 17-degree factory bevel. Sometimes they're off on one side. Sometimes the total of them is still the same, but they're kind of like twisted. But basically, the idea is a good factory edge is 17 degrees. So that's just how I check to start. So first thing you're going to do when you sharpen is you're going to find it with the factory. You want to line this up with the factory grind unless you're specifically doing a bunch of rework and you're trying to get to a certain angle. Whenever I sharpen a Spyderco, I go directly to 17 degrees. So I'm at 17 degrees now. Re-zero it on the arm. Make sure it's still good. So that's how you measure on a TS Prof or a lot of other sharpeners. So we're at 17. You can zero on your arm and set it on the base. That's how you get your angle. Okay, so we're at 17. That's like my baseline where I start. Now here is the next important step. You're going to take a medium, I say a medium grit stone. Fine grit stones are okay, but I find medium ones, like this is a 150, work good for this task. But you're going to get a Sharpie marker. And what you're going to do is you're going to draw on the edge of your blade. Okay, so our arm is at 17 degrees. We draw on the edge of our blade. We have a medium grit stone. And now what I'm going to do with the stone dry is I'm going to rub it over the marker. And it removed not all of the marker, but as the edge moves, it removed all the marker in some spots, and some of the spots is at a lower angle. So this is good. This is probably where we're going to be at. So we'll flip sides. Do the same thing again. And again, if you do a Spyderco and you start with 17, this process is usually really easy. And so this one on this side, so what's happening on the presentation side is it's only grinding at the leading edge, not the top of the bevel, the leading edge where it's sharp. So when that happens, it means your angle is too high. So you want to go down a little bit. When you're too high, you'll be hitting the front of the edge first and then grinding away the bevel in the back. And if you're too low, you'll be grinding the bevel and moving forward. So in this case, since one side's about perfect and one side's a little bit high, we're going to go with that. So it's at 17 degrees. And this is an example where both sides aren't the same. So this one side might be a half a degree higher. but it's not lining up perfectly. So I don't want to adjust anymore. I want to stay where I am. So first thing I'm going to do is swap out to my lowest grit stone. So my lowest grit stone I have is an 80. And your most coarse stone is the most important stone. So I know a lot of people spend money on like really fancy polishing stones and 10K whatevers, but this is the most important one because you can't make a good looking edge unless you set a foundation for it. So this is doing all the work that you're then going to shine up. This is what heating metal, everything else is just polishing. So first thing we're going to do, take our 80 grit, double check everything, make sure we're not going to hit the heel. Looks like I twisted a little bit. Clamp this really tight so it doesn't move. It's also nice to invest in good general tools for doing anything knife related. So the Allen wrenches that come with this suck. They come loose. Use good Allen wrenches. These are made by MIP. These are like 10 times better than Weehaw stuff. These are amazing screwdrivers. They're really expensive, but I can torque the crap out of these screws without anything twisting out. Okay. Water with a drop of dish soap in it. On the stone. Get a towel underneath. We're going to start on the clip side. And we're just going to kind of saw away, watching how much of the Sharpie disappears. So with a coarser stone, if you're relatively close, it will get rid of the Sharpie pretty easily. So we already got rid of the Sharpie on the front 3/4 of the blade. So now, really, this part of the blade from here forward is already profiled. It was already at a good angle. We cleaned it up with a couple passes with the heavy grit. But the most important thing we're going to do is the heel. So heels are tough. You just got to be patient and check them often. So what we're going to do is slowly, while we're profiling, work towards the back and slowly just kind of start kissing up against the heel and then kind of riding on top of it. Do not put much pressure, if any. Do a few passes and then look. And so what you'll start to see is it will start to develop a heel. It will start to eat it away. And when that line is completely straight, you stop. So that's the trick with doing a heel is you don't want to overdo it because then it will start to be called smile. It'll come up the back of the heel. You want to be dead flat where it intersects there. So this is where we're going to concentrate with this coarse stone on this side is we're going to eat away some, but not all of the heel. I usually do heels in 2 to 3 passes per side. So we're going to kind of grind on this for a little bit. So I go vertical strokes, and then a couple blending strokes to go forward. Make sure I'm not notching a spot. Okay. So now we're going to flip sides and do the same thing on the other. But this side's going to be a little bit more difficult because we're not at as clean of an angle from the factory like the other side was. So we have Sharpie on our edge. We're going to see how much this coarse stone takes it away. Not far off at all. It's taking most of the Sharpie off. One thing I notice a lot, and it's almost always on the presentation side, the most difficult spot to get on the presentation side is usually the top half of the tip. I don't know why. The way they grind it from the factory, it's really tough to get that spot. So on this side, I'll probably spend a lot of time right there, and I'll show you how I do a tip, and then the heel will be the same. So now we're just evening out the bevel. I'm working up to the tip, and the important thing about the tip is you don't want to go off of it. So if you go more than halfway across your tip and you start to roll, you'll roll the tip and it looks kind of funky. It still functions, but don't do that. So we want to keep, sometimes I even put my finger under here when I'm working it. You want to keep the stone flat and floating at the same plane as the tip. So right now I'm on the tip and I have my finger underneath there, and it's just staying totally flat while I'm working that one spot on the tip. And we still got a little bit more work to do there, but we've created such a big burr on the backside now that we're going to work the rest of the edge and then come back and hit it again. So that's what you need to do on a heel when you do a couple passes, is you're working the big burr back and forth until everything looks even and square. So sometimes one side will start to look high and you work the opposite side, but you still go back. So never neglect one side of an edge when you're doing this, because if you keep on working, try to get somewhere, it will just, it won't be good. You'll eat away too much and you won't be able to get back. Now we're doing the heel again, vertical strokes and then some fading strokes. And since the way we have this set up and my stone is parallel to the heel, I'm literally pushing against the flat grind line. And you're only contacting at a very, very small spot at the bottom. And if you have stones that don't have grit on the side, like these don't have grit on the side, you can do that. And it makes a perfectly clean heel that goes all the way to the very end. So KME stones are wonderful for this. That's part of why I fell in love with the KME, is the KME's diamond plates have perfect edges. So they make for perfect heels. That's how I learned to do this. So I've owned stones that didn't have good heels, and I don't own them anymore. This is pretty fun, I'm not going to lie. Very zen-like. Okay, so we still have some more work to do on this heel, on this side, but we got most of it actually. Now we're going to flip back. We're not going to try to finish that side all in one pass. We're going to do it in multiple. So when you've created a burr, I should probably talk about that. When you're at the right angle at the bevel and you're removing all the Sharpie, you're curling over the end of the edge. It's called the burr. That's how you know when you're actually sharpening, is when the apex is this is the apex, that little tip. When the apex is being hit and sharpened at the right angle, it'll curl over like this, and then you flip sides, it'll curl back. So what we're doing when we're sharpening is we need to make sure we're always hitting the apex, and we're slowly working that down smaller and smaller with different finer grit stones. So this burr is huge right now. So I was sharpening that with an 80 grit, and I was really going after it because we had to reprofile that. You can catch it with your nail. It's very noticeable. So now we're going to switch sides and get rid of that a little bit and work the heel again. You can hear it, you can feel it when you kind of hit the burr for the first time. So typically I do, on my first stone, 3 flips per side, and then moving up I usually do 2 flips. But this process is really a lot of just watching the heel, seeing how it develops, going back and forth, little bits at a time. This process usually takes a couple minutes. And we're really starting to get there already. It's forming really nicely. We're blending it in. So the idea is you want the bevel to be the same size as the rest of the bevel. So there is a perfect stopping point you have to get to, and you have to kind of pay attention. So it's looking really nice right now. So now we're going to do the other side. Actually, I'll take a little break, and I'm going to go to some comments. I suggest, well, this is a good way to start, kind of, but watch YouTube videos. Watch Knife Crazy with a K. He is how I learned how to use the KME. His videos are very slow, but they're very informative in that you'll be sharpening like a pro. The guided system I recommend is a KME 100%. And like I said, I love the KME stones. The KME system works in the exact same manner as the TS Prof. It's just a less high-tech version of it. So for $200, I absolutely recommend getting a KME. If you're really into sharpening, you can move up to a TS Prof, but most people never need to really get to this level. Okay. So our tip is still got some black marker on it that I'm trying to work off. Usually the most difficult spot. And sometimes you just can't get it all. Got most of it. Good enough. Working the edge again, checking the heel. And what we're going to do is watch not just for the heel, but there's usually a spot directly in front of the heel that's hard to get. It's the result of how the heel builds up and how your stone hits it. So you really got to grind away sometimes and make sure that you work it all the way and there's scratches are all even, because right now I'm still showing some spots that aren't getting hit yet. Right up against the top of the bevel. Still has a little hole in it. Okay, flip again. So now, at this point, this side's basically done. What we're wanting to do is just minimize the burr, so I'm not putting any pressure on the stone. I'm making sure all my scratch marks go the same direction. So I'm sweeping forward sweeping strokes. Making sure the heel is done, and forward sweeping strokes. And then hit the tip. Okay, this side, the heel is looking very square. There's no inconsistencies. Everything has the same scratch throughout. They're all facing forward. They all will look uniform on our next stone. So flipping back to the presentation side, we still have a bit more work to do. Still a bit more on the tip. There's no such thing as a perfect Spyderco. They always have one or two things that aren't quite right. Okay, we're going to call that good. We got some work on the heel though. And sometimes I reverse my direction of my strokes. I don't know. I feel like it's easy for me to see where it's been hit, and it highlights it in a new sheen of the scratches. Man, we got a tough spot down there. So I'm going to leave that spot for now because I don't want to do this forever on camera because we're not going to go for a mirror. We're just going to go for a sharpened edge. We have a square heel. There's still some imperfections I'll clean up later. But right now we've apexed it, and that's the important thing. So we just did is we profiled the blade. We put the heel on it, and now we made both sides 17 degrees. So you can feel both sides when you flip the blade over, it has a burr. So when it has a burr, we're sharpening. So we're going to flip back to this side, switch down to our next stone. And typically, I don't know, this is kind of by feel or guess, or I don't know what the best answer is to do it without watching carefully, but we're just going to sharpen away for a little bit, and then we're going to flip and I do that twice. That's kind of my system. It's kind of how I keep track of how many times I've sharpened something. I count to 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm done. That's how I kind of keep track of what stroke I'm on. So I'm going to do this for about a minute per side. And I go both directions, forward sweeping and backward seeking strokes to make sure I hit all my scratches. And so this stone makes a different noise. It's quieter, it's less rough. This is 150. The CBN 150 doesn't feel like a diamond plate 150, I would say. So now we're looking across the edge, and it's very uniform look. It looks like we've got rid of the scratches from the previous stone. So let's give it another couple passes real quick. Work the heel. Nothing is worse than when you don't really get after a heel and then you have to redo the whole knife and you're done. So we're going to make sure this is all the way done this first time. Okay. Flip. How do you make sure the apex isn't off-centered in this mid-plane of the blade stock? Well, usually you can tell by how big the bevel is. So if the bevel is the same angle on both sides, but is bigger on one side than the other, the side that it's bigger on means it's farther away from the center. So then you just work the opposite edge more and kind of eat away at that if you want to make the bevel even out. But for the most part, they're not horrible. The more important thing is just make sure it's clamped correctly so it's centered in the clamp. So now we're polishing the bevel and reducing the size of the burr. So we're going to make sure we hit all our spots. I do vertical strokes on the heel, then forward sweeping strokes to blend it in, and hit all my scratches. We're almost done with that spot, actually. We have one spot on this one's heel where the factory edge had a little divot in it, and to get it evened out, it's taking a little bit of scrubbing. I need some more water. Sometimes when stuff stops cutting, it's because you don't have any water. Okay, looking pretty good. Looks like we got that notch kind of out. Edge is looking pretty nice. Do a couple more forward sweeping strokes, line all the scratch marks up. Other important thing I just thought of as I hit it. If you're sharpening with the guide system, use a stop collar like this. Stop collar hits here, so your stone doesn't go over the top of your blade. That's the most common question I see about KMEs is I did it and now I have scratches all over the top of my blade. It's because you didn't use a stop collar and your blade rode up on the face of it. It's super easy to do, especially when you're learning. So use a stop collar to stop the rod before it runs over the stone. Okay, so now we've done one pass on each side and really got after it. And so now this pass, we're mainly focusing on deburring it and just working it down a little smaller. So we're going to spend less time and less pressure on the second pass. making sure everything looks good. A couple more strokes. Now we're switch back. All right. Now we're going to switch to a 400 grit stone. Love these stones. And now at 400, we're really starting to actually get some shine already. These CBNs are so amazing. They finish so well without leaving scratches. So the edge is already looking beautiful. So currently, my sharpest edges, I only do 400 grit. I don't mirror them. I only do them to this grit. So after this, we could be done if we want. Nice thing about satin edges is it hides some of the imperfections, it hides your scratches, it hides your mess ups. Mirrors are fun, mirrors are nice, mirrors look cool, and they can be sharp. They also can be really dull and be really shiny but dull. So if you spend forever chasing every single scratch on a mirror edge that you got from a stone with a strop, you will dull the edge eventually. So you want to get the scratches out with your stones as much as possible, and then just do the final polish with the strop. So if you're not going for a mirror and you can just concentrate on getting sharp, which is I think what we're going to do, you can stop at 400, 600 grit and have a screaming sharp edge that will last longer, and it will be more aggressive because it'll have a little bit of teeth on it. So that's what I've been doing for my own knives is satin edges. I got kind of, I figured mirrors out. I know how to do them now. I was excited. I was really happy when I did my first real mirror. But if you can just concentrate on getting sharp before you concentrate on getting shiny, it's a lot more rewarding. So we're going to stop at 400 grit. So we're just going to do a couple more passes on this of decreasing frequency. All right, and since we're going to stop here, it's really important to kind of just make everything look without stopping or jittering. You just kind of want nice sweeping strokes. So what we're left with is the burr is still there. So we're going super light, just trying to minimize it, pull the burr off. And now we're going to pop it out of the clamps. Okay, we sharpened a knife. That's how you sharpen it, right? Yeah, but no. So right now, if I try to cut paper, it'll cut paper fine. It feels slow, And if you put your hand against the tip on the presentation side and put your thumb over it, it's got a little bit of a burr still. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a strop. So this is a strop. If you're unfamiliar with these, if you've ever watched cartoons like Looney Tunes and they're at a barber shop and the guy was like taking the straight razor on the piece of leather, that's what a strop is. A strop is the final finishing step for my edges. And this is a 3-micron strop, which means this piece of leather here has diamond emulsion, which is very small specks of diamond in a paste that gets rubbed on here. I use Gunny Juice by Scott Gunn. And what that does is it takes, it's like a polishing compound. And what we're doing is we're going to pull the burr and anything left of the edge off on the leather by doing this. So what you're going to do to find the angle is you push into the leather while you raise the blade. So if you don't know where to start, push up, and then when it bites, you're at the right angle. You will feel it when you're at the right angle, though. And then you're just going to slowly do this. I've been doing a lot less stropping lately, and my edges are a lot sharper. So I try to just kind of do what's necessary. And you'll feel it as it kind of like hits little rough spots, or it's not smooth, or you're not sitting on the bevel. You'll be able to feel that stuff in the knife. So we're good. So there's our edge on one side. Kind of hard to see. Now to the presentation side. I can feel the burr still on there, so we're just working it slowly. Very light pressure on the strop. I work my tip separate from the rest of the edge. I do lots on the heel usually because heels are always more scratched than anything else. So I usually do more stropping on the heel. And I think we're done. We just sharpened a knife there, folks. Let's see if it's sharp. Yes, it's sharp. Do little doodles. It'll cut little doodles. Once you've sharpened enough knives and you've cut enough paper, you can feel and hear how an edge grabs paper or how it slices through there. I really have been liking these more aggressive edges than my polished edges. They can look nice. They can look really nice. So yeah, that was sharpening a knife. What else? I got Sharpie is important. You got angle cube, good tools, a strop. If you're doing a DLC knife and you want to do the heel and not fuck up the DLC, buy good, not cheap, good Scotch brand electrical tape. And wrap the heel and the vertical grind line of your DLC blades with this so you can push your stone against it and grind away without grinding off all the DLC, which is a huge bummer. So don't cheap out on this stuff. It matters. You need, so it costs like $3, so just get the good stuff. It sticks way better is why. Also important on DLC blades. Once you're done sharpening a DLC blade, it will look like garbage for history of time unless you take a drop of oil. This is honing oil, but mineral oil or whatever else will work. Put it on your blade, and then you take a magic eraser. This is a Mr. Clean magic eraser, and you rub it on the DLC, and it gets all the dirt and all the crap off and makes it really dark, but it leaves it all oily. And when it leaves it oily, you take your chamois cloth again, the leather chamois cloth, and you wipe it off, and it's nice, matte black, looks brand new. So that's also very important as a professional sharpener. I have to be able to make knives look like I didn't destroy them before I return them. I spend a lot of time cleaning knives up to make them look like they did before I got them. Also important for sharpening if you have a knife that does not have a heel like a Spyderco, like let's say this Roosevelt, you have a zip tie, and you take the zip tie and you put it at where you want the sharpener to not go past. So I'm going to put it right here at the heel. I'm not going to sharpen it all the way. I'm going to put it right there. So what that does is when it's there, now my arm of my sharpener, when it's going back and forth, it bumps that. It doesn't bump the handle of the knife. It bumps the zip tie, and it doesn't run off the edge. It just stops where it needs to stop. So knives without a heel, use a zip tie. This is a nice little goodie. I haven't used it a lot since I have pretty good vision. But this is a little magnifying glass that Jason got me. These are handy for checking out edges. They're fun. I do it with naked eye, but there's a lot more you can see when you get up close. That's it. I don't know what else. I have an 800 and a 2000 stone, and that will give a mirror edge. That's all it takes is 800, 2000, same amount of stropping, and you'll have a mirror. It's really not that hard. It just takes a lot of practice. I'm happy to sharpen knives for anybody, or I'm happy to teach anybody to learn how to sharpen knives offline if you're interested. So anyway, I just wanted to do a quick sharpening since I had a fun little knife of mine. Brand of the microscope thing is, where did I put it? Where did it go? Coarse. Works pretty well. Thank you, Carl. I have not tried basswood strops yet. I've only done leather. I do want to get some basswood blanks and do guided stropping on my TS Prof, but I have not done that yet. I do find that hand stropping is very satisfying. Takes some practice, but once you get good at it, I don't know, it gives me the results I want, so I don't have a reason to not use it, I guess. But it's definitely not as perfect as using it on your sharpener. Anyway, sharp knife. That's all it takes. Hit me up. Love you guys. Bye-bye.